Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. I am your host. I go by Granite. Today, we will be discussing the 1996 classic Fargo, written and directed by the Coen brothers. An important note, today's podcast is based on a true story. I'm joined today by very special guests, Brad and Kevin, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's
from the Art of Darkness podcast. Welcome, guys. For anyone in my audience who may not have heard your show, how would you describe what you guys do?
I'll let Kevin do that one, I think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Art of Darkness is a podcast about the dark side of creativity. We do biographical profiles of dead artists. They have to be dead for a year before we will take them on. So, for example, recently, rest in peace, the great Cormac McCarthy passed away. People came to us and said, well, what are you going to do? And we said, we have to wait a year. We don't ambulance chase on the pod, in other words, but we will be doing a Cormac episode this year.
Yeah.
And the episodes tend to run long. They're 4 or 5 hours, and people seem to like it. That's what we do.
You do it live, don't you?
What do you mean do it live? I mean, no, we record.
Yeah, I've listened to some, and it's you have like your live streaming or something, right? Because you have people chatting to you, don't you?
Occasionally. I mean, we have an active Telegram. The website is artofdarkpod.com. The Telegram is t.me/artofdarkpod. And occasionally the Telegram will chime in, but yeah, no, people are not listening when we record. However, we're very raw. We don't edit. We don't edit a thing. This, again, people seem to appreciate that. We're sort of the antidote to the overproduced, overpolished material.
I am thinking about bringing in like horse clops and like leaves blowing sounds.
Yeah, like Foley effects and things.
Yeah, radio drama.
Glug, 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 glug.
Yeah.
So you guys aren't. Yeah, you're not overly produced or anything. It is a very casual experience, and I've gotten into your guys' stuff the last 2 months or so. I've been listening a lot to, partly, in prep for this, just to get a feel for what you guys are like.
Yeah.
I'd been hearing about you guys forever, and I just didn't until now. But I'm now a subscribed member to the Patreon, cool. And any
cool, man. Well, we appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Same. Go subscribe.
Yeah.
So I listened to, let's see, most recently, like Flannery O'Connor, David Foster Wallace, and a couple others. John Lennon, that was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's very casual conversation, but I'm going to say something, and this might sound like an insult, but this is I mean this in a very, very nice way. I could imagine your show on like an NPR affiliate on like Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine, this is a good thing. What I mean by this is you guys just, it sounds like you guys have everything planned out, like you have the conversation sort of planned out, but it still feels conversational.
Yeah. So part of that comes from one of us, it has, and a core episode like that, one of us has spent hours and hours and hours putting basically a presentation together. And then the other person's kind of reacting to it. So you kind of get a mix of those things. And that's where the fun of it usually comes is I'm presenting one to Kevin, and Kevin, Kevin's observations or insights or jokes or whatever kind of take it off into a direction. But yeah, we all have dozens of pages sometimes of notes ready to go before we hit record. So. Yeah.
And then there's these little moments where, and the term you guys use, I think you guys say you're very online, or you're online.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean by that. But I might go like 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, I could imagine my sister listening to this. And then you make a reference and I'm like, my sister wouldn't get that reference, but she'd probably still keep listening. Like, so you guys are really good. I think a lot of people could could learn something from the way you guys are doing it.
I appreciate that.
I'll tell you, I am living out my Mystery Science Theater 3000 fantasy, a great Minnesota cultural product, by the way. Yeah. So when Brad does an episode, I just get to sit back and look for the laughs. Not always. and some people, maybe don't appreciate the humor, but we say on the pod that we laugh so we don't cry. We take our subjects seriously, but when there's a funny moment, when there's a chance to make a crack, I try to get in there and do it. I mean, recently we did the Marquis de Sade. Brad covered the Marquis de Sade behind the paywall. And he's still taking shots from the field research for that. And, I heard from at least one listener who said, thank you for like making light of it, like bringing levity to it. Otherwise I would have quit listening. So that's the kind of show it is.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's like, I learn a ton. It's like, you guys are doing biographies and stuff. I've really enjoyed it. So
yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Yeah, and thanks for subscribing. We really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you kind of alluded to it, but you guys are both from the Midwest, right?
Yes, sir. I'm from Michigan, and Kevin is from.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm from Western North Dakota, and kind of technically the Midwest, but it's like right on the edge of the West. The town I grew up in, Mandan, North Dakota. The motto of the town is "Where the West begins." But I grew up in the Midwest. I mean, and I got out of there to come to the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers! When I was 17 years old. So I consider myself a Midwesterner.
Well, yeah, especially if you went to Minnesota for school. So I had a question. So you've been to Gophers hockey games, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, you betcha. Yeah, you got to go support the Gophers.
And then, Brad, where did you say you were from?
I'm from Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, close enough. I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's there's actually some similarities between Minnesota and Michigan. I haven't spent enough time in North Dakota to say, but yeah.
Well, I think you're close enough to have a take on what I'm about to ask. Would you say the film Fargo, the way, and now it's set in 1987, and maybe you weren't really old enough to be aware back then, but would you say it's fair to the way people are there?
In the Dakotas and in Minnesota? Yes. Yeah, it absolutely is. It's slightly exaggerated. It's a click over. And yet you can still find folks like that today. Mm-hmm. There's still people hanging on to that. And, I know that it's made light of the Coens I think that they're also sort of charmed by it, because of course they're from here as well. And so it is an authentic culture of its own, even though, everything since the 80s of, everywhere has been sort of flattened out and, further deracinated. Right. Yeah. It's real for sure. I mean, you could walk into the home of a family right now, out in Stillwater or up in White Bear Lake, go Bears. And if grandma is still kicking, I mean, that generation has been on the way out for a while, but their children are still around. The vibe is definitely different with the boomers than it is with that kind of generation before. But tchotchkes and the certain kind of carpeting and how else to describe it?
The color palette.
Yeah, the palette, the sort of beige palette, is real. And I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I think they were fair. I think that people think that it's more of an exaggeration than it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the accents, I guess, is the main thing. I have heard accents like that before.
Oh yeah. You just have to start thinking about Gopher hockey, and then you can maybe start to. It's a little Canadian, but it's a little more southerly, and it's got a little bit of a lilting kind of a Swedish thing going on there, because the Swedes are really the people who have run the state for a long time. Although that's changed a lot lately. I mean, things are very different. I mean, I'm kind of doing a bad impression of it, but it's real. And and if you go outstate, like if you leave the Twin Cities, I mean, it's like the way to think about it is the further away you get from the University of Minnesota, go Gophers. The more likely you are to start to hear that accent, and even if it's not that strong, it'll be you'll hear it in little like flits. It'll just come out, and you'll go, oh yeah, or oh you betcha. I mean, you'll hear it in little bits and bobs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a huge Somalian population now, or
yeah, there are a few large immigrant populations. There's a Hmong population, which, and this I have to bring this up because Gran Torino was written by a fella from the Twin Cities here. I think he's from St. Paul, and there's no Hmong population in Detroit. But my understanding is they moved that film to Detroit, I think for tax breaks and also like the whatever the car metaphor. But that Gran Torino is 100% a Twin Cities movie. It is set literally in my neighborhood. Like that is where I live, like spiritually. So there's a Hmong community. And then there's a massive Somalian community with a huge amount of political influence. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about your guys' history. Well, I'll go first, I guess. But my history with the film Fargo, I think I saw this in high school. I had like one friend who was into film, and we would go watch movies, and we would often pick stuff that like other guys in our group did not want to watch. Like no one wanted to watch Fargo. So, and so we watched it one night, and there's this disclaimer at the beginning that this is a true story. Mm-hmm. And like, this is the 90s or something. And we didn't, we had the internet or whatever, but we weren't going to look it up like right then. So, so we're watching this movie and it just gets crazier and crazier. And we're like, how on earth is this a true story? And we're like freaking out. Like, there's no way this is a true story. And then we learn later it's not. Mm-hmm. But I loved it since then. I've watched it at least every couple years or so since then.
Yeah. I'll say that I have to watch it every year. I mean, you have to watch it every year to get your driver's license renewed up here.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like a 10 out of 10 movie. There's nothing. It's only 90 minutes long, and they pack so much in there. It feels like a bigger, heavier movie than a 90-minute movie. I don't know. I don't think there's like a bad line in the movie. I don't think there's really. I mean, I can appreciate some people not liking it, but it's I have no critique really of the movie.
From a script perspective, it is a finely oiled machine. Like it does everything has purpose, right? Everything is, even though it's not like an intricate, difficult to follow plot or something. It's just every frame seems carefully done, and they don't waste any time at all.
Yeah. When did you guys first see it? And then kind of a follow-on question, I'm curious where it ranks for you guys among other like movies of the Midwest or movies of like area, the world.
Yeah. I must have seen it in the late 90s. I don't remember exactly. It was the first Coen Brothers movie I saw. I do know that because, 1996, I was 13. So if I saw it a couple years later, whatever, I was 15. I was like just getting into the phase where I like realized that you could like a director, if that makes sense. Like, you get to a point where you're like, oh, that guy made that too. And, you start to kind of draw conclusions. I think I'd seen Fargo and liked it, and then saw The Big Lebowski some years later. It was like, oh, those are the same people, and kind of opened up a whole world for me. So Fargo was very early, in my sort of actually paying attention to films, perhaps with a slightly greater degree of sophistication or whatever. And I loved it. I mean, I know it's Fargo, it's not Michigan, but I definitely felt there is here in Michigan, there is this a similar, I guess, tension between like the rural and the urban that you feel in this in Fargo that I have felt growing up where I grew up and living where I do now, which isn't very far from there. The sort of that sort of dynamic of those two things kind of feeding into each other and sort of tilting each other in certain ways, I thought was really interesting. And then there's also just this if you were to just describe the plot in a sentence or two, it's based on this kidnapping and this kind of trying to get a sum of money, and there's a little bit of a almost a, I don't quite want to say noir, though it has noir elements, but the fact that the characters involved, nobody's really slick, nobody's particularly competent. Margie is sort of, I guess. It's so on those aspects, it's so fresh compared to like any other crime movie I had seen. Like, it was like, oh, you can make a crime movie about just like normal people, right? And that aspect of it, I remember being really, really eye opening. Just
yeah, I got to push back against you just slightly there, Brad.
Sure.
I mean, Margie is extraordinarily competent,
right?
And she goes above and and I know you were whatever, but that's rather the point of the film. And she might not be the greatest detective, but like her husband, the 3-cent stamp is enough. People
right,
use the little ones when they raise the price.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of the whole metaphor. She goes out of her way. She goes out of her jurisdiction to go and figure this out because she cares enough. But it's played in such an understated way that and the fact that it's a pregnant woman. And it is noirish. I don't know if you'd formally call it a noir, but if you did, you'd say it's a noir in the snow.
You guys had a great thing on your show where I can't remember what episode. It might have been the one with Lomez that we mentioned earlier. Shout out Lomez. Whatever. Today's the day that his whole thing happened. But you guys were talking about noirs versus westerns versus southerns versus like northerns, like you guys. That was you guys, right?
We did talk about that. That was an interesting
discussion, I thought.
Yeah, well, appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, if I remember the sort of layout, like a northern is that the legal system is fundamentally intact and maybe not effective, but not corrupted. I think that's right. Like an episode of Law and Order, right? Like ultimately the
authorities still have authority, and their authority is still
legitimate,
authoritative.
Yeah.
You guys might have mentioned Fargo in that context, because that sounds like Fargo.
Yeah, it does, right? I mean, you don't you wouldn't expect the cops to start turning corrupt in that film, right? That would be an odd turn.
There's even an instance where Buscemi's character tries to bribe the officer with a 50, which is very funny because if you ever look at those like was it corruption index things that like political science departments put out or whatever.
Yeah.
The lowest on earth are always like Scandinavian countries and then like the northern Midwest in America and Utah, where I'm from. It's like all these Scandinavian people, basically. It's like you're not going to bribe a Scandinavian with a 50.
Right.
yeah. And you're not going to bribe them with a couple of hockey tickets to the Gophers either. Yeah. Hey, you just triggered a very formative memory that I have. You're asking when was the first time we saw Fargo? I can't precisely remember when the first time I saw the whole film was. Probably like Brad, it was late 90s, probably a few years after it came out. But I recall distinctly now coming upstairs, and my mother and my stepfather were in the middle of watching a movie, and a couple of whores were riding a couple of criminals in that exact moment. And I was like 14, right? And my mom was like, "Go, get out." And I'm like, "What the fuck are they watching? What are my parents watching?" You know, very, very funny now in hindsight to think about that. I mean, and you know, you got to understand too what a coup it was and remains for the Coens to have put their stamp on this region with a film that's this severe and intense. You have to understand that, like, this was like movie store time. All right.
Yeah.
So, and I worked at a movie store. I worked at a little Video Max in Mandan, North Dakota. It was like a little knockoff. You know, we didn't even have a Blockbuster. We had a Video Max, and that was my post. You know, a few years after this film came out, and yeah, got to understand the kind of person that would walk into the Video Max in 1998 and just go, "Oh, hey, there's a movie called Fargo. Let's watch." You gotta, you know, like literal, like we're talking about, God love them. We're talking about farmers. We're talking about ranchers. We're talking about used car dealers. And the Coens just dropped this nuke on their heads.
Do you know the John Kasich story?
No, I don't.
So he was the governor of Ohio. Either he might have been the governor of Ohio at the time, or maybe right after. Or I don't know where it is in the timeline, but he went to the video store. Someone, the clerk recommended Fargo, and he takes it home, watches. I think he says he turns it off partway through. It's, you know, it's too disgusting, too violent for him, and he doesn't end there. He starts like this letter writing campaign to the video store to get it removed from the shelf.
Right. That's the time that we were living in. Yeah, it's a long gone time. Hard to imagine.
There's like two pages in his in one of his books, like one of his campaign books, about this story. He really hates Fargo.
Wow, wow, that
gets too close to the bone.
It feels so. In terms of like the violence and I guess anything else that sort of makes something R-rated, it feels kind of mild. Am I just desensitized? Like, it feels.
I think I bet the scene. I don't remember his like quote exactly. I bet the scene that got him is the cop. Yeah, here's the thing that happens in fiction and film and stuff is if you're watching something with a lot of deaths, each death has very little value.
Right.
There's just always a guy getting shot.
Yeah.
But then in Fargo, it goes from 0 to 60 in an instant.
That's true.
Well, I mean, not quite 0 to 60 because they've already kidnapped the wife at this point, but still, she hasn't been killed or anything. And then they just shoot this cop in the head. And that's probably where he was like, oh, you know, because people see that and they can't. There's this, and this is one of the main rants of this show, is that people can't separate seeing something on screen and what they're seeing being an endorsement. Like they see it and they say, well, this is happening on the screen, so the filmmaker's okay with this. It's like, well, they're not saying they're okay with it.
Right.
It's just happened, but
right.
That
is funny. I have a hard time even getting into that headspace of like, I'm watching this film Fargo, you know, say I don't know anything about it, and then that happens, and I think, I can't believe they're promoting this kind of violence. It's like,
and this was
scumbags. Like what?
right. But this is the same year that Antichrist Superstar came out.
Oh yeah,
in 1996, the year that civilization peaked. Like unless we get back to something greater, they're going to look back and say 1996 was where it all ended. It was the greatest year. I really firmly believe this. This is a thesis.
I was coughing when you said that. Were you referencing the Marilyn Manson album?
Yeah, the Marilyn Manson album, and I'm speaking about that in the context of this conversation about people not being able to dissociate the art from the art, like the artist. Like maybe the artist is trying to. I understand Manson is way more extreme even than the Coens than Fargo, but this was the mindset at the time. Like, oh gosh, how can they show that? They must approve of that.
Yeah, and just in general, it was a new era for exploration and censorship, you know, like the whole parental advisory was developed in this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I was curious, Kevin. I'm curious what other movies came out in 1996, and there are some bangers.
But you want to read them?
Well, I mean, I just kind of clicked on Wikipedia. First one I saw in here was From Dusk Till Dawn. You guys remember that movie?
Oh yeah, hell yeah,
Yeah.
And Screamers. White Squall is great if you're like a 13-year-old boy. That's a great movie.
White Squall was great.
Yeah.
Scary. That terrified me of the ocean.
Yeah, for real, right? No, there are some great movies in 1996. I'll give it to you, Kevin.
So Fargo was nominated for Best Picture, and I'll read off the list. It was English Patient, Fargo, Jerry Maguire, Secrets and Lies. I don't know what Secrets and Lies is. I can't remember that. And then Shine.
Shine.
I vaguely remember Shine. I think it's like a handicapped person.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
but
that was actually based on a true story, I believe.
What won that year?
English Patient,
Yeah.
and I remember. Yeah, I remember distinctly as a kid. I remember watching Siskel and Ebert, and Ebert can be a hater, but he really liked Fargo, and I remember him saying he's like, English Patient is going to win next week. Fargo should win. And I agreed with him just because I did. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen either, but I just agreed.
Does anybody remember The English Patient? And maybe I'm biased by my regionalism, but does anybody think The English Patient is a more lasting or influential film than Fargo? I
wouldn't think so. I can't remember it very well. I went back and watched the trailer yesterday, and I'm like, okay, this is sort of a Lawrence of Arabia sort of thing. Like, I don't know how good it was, but I can see people being swept up in that. It was more of a romance, I don't know.
Yeah, I never saw it. It was one of those things that I, knew about it and saw no reason. It wasn't for me. It's when it's in that category.
I had long maintained, partly because of this Ebert memory, and then I later actually saw Fargo. I had long maintained, Fargo was robbed. It should have won Best Picture. And so I went back and I asked ChatGPT. I'm like, if the Academy Awards for '96 were held again, who would win? And ChatGPT is, and I didn't prime it for this answer. It's just like, in light of changing cultural tastes and like historical cultural relevance over time, it's safe to say that Fargo would have won. If you held it again.
ChatGPT gets a rare dub.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. I mean, I think that's totally true because I'm assuming that The English Patient, for whatever qualities it had, was probably fairly conventional. It probably didn't have and Fargo. I mean, Fargo is so sort of dynamic that they decided like 20 years after the fact that they were going to make a TV show that's just sort of has the similar vibe. Right. Yeah. And it was super successful. So yeah, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that English Patient has left an impression anywhere near that. I think there was a Seinfeld episode that dealt with The English Patient. I'm trying to remember it, but
yeah, I'm remembering bandages on a face or something.
Yeah.
I asked a question earlier. It's okay if there's not a good answer for this, but I'm curious about other Midwestern movies. Partly because I watched like 7 recently.
Oh, yeah, Midwestern movies.
Well, the first one that pops to my mind, and Brad, I want you to obviously jump in, but the first one that pops to my mind is The Straight Story.
Yes.
Which is an all-time emotional banger. And it's totally surprising, of course, from David Lynch that he could make a film like that. But
yeah, I love that. I recently watched that. It was a huge blind spot for me. I highly recommend it. Mm-hmm. For anyone not aware, it's a G-rated David Lynch film distributed by Disney.
Well, he had a relationship with ABC, which is the mouse.
Yeah.
I mean, the Twin Peaks came out on ABC. So he had a deal with them, and who knows? I mean, they probably wanted him to make a movie, and all right, I'll make a movie. And it's a tearjerker. It's a real. Yeah. There are very few films that are guaranteed to make me kind of choke up a little bit, and The Straight Story is 100% one of those.
Yeah. Highly recommend. I hadn't seen it. I know a lot of people haven't, so I recommend it. Yeah. Any others that come to mind for you guys?
Yeah, I'm thinking like there's Detroit movies, which
Well,
isn't
that
quite
counts.
the same.
That counts. That
Yeah.
counts.
Yeah.
I think I'd say though Chicago is a different thing. I would not
Okay.
count
Okay.
Chicago
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah. Yeah. What is?
Listen. Okay. All right. Okay. Listen. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Okay.
All right. I never wanted to be your weekend lover. I only wanted to be some kind of friend. All right. I only wanted just to see you dancing in the purple rain.
Oh,
All
okay.
right.
Well,
Yeah.
Purple rain. You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Purple rain. 100%.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's a super Midwestern movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I might have to update my question to rural Midwestern or something. But no,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair. Or not just non-city, non-urban.
Right.
Okay. All right.
No,
We're not okay.
Purple Rain's a good one. Purple Rain's a good one.
Yeah.
Chicago's still excluded, but yeah. In prep for this, I watched American Movie, that documentary.
Oh, that's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, that one's
Yeah.
incredible. Nebraska.
Oh yeah, Nebraska. I remember like not loving it, but also going, okay, this is solid. That's a solid film.
I like it a lot, but I don't know why it's in black and white. And it's like I can imagine when it came out, people are like, I can imagine my parents would probably be like, "Why is this black and white? That's stupid." And at the time, I'd probably be like, "Oh, it's an artistic choice. You don't understand." But now I'm with them. I'm like, "Nah, that was not. Just there's no reason for this to be black and white." Just have you guys seen A Simple Plan?
I don't know that I have.
Total Fargo companion piece. Like it's Midwestern, wintertime. Some people get in over their head over money, and disaster ensues from there. So that's
Yeah, I mean, this is what was it called? A Simple Plan. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
I think there was a emo band or whatever, pop punk band named
Right.
that.
One that feels well. See, that's not really rural either. I was thinking National Lampoons. I know. It's tough for me to come up with a Midwestern movie. I think is the.
I mean,
part of the
if we're
problem.
talking about rural, it gets a little trickier. But I mean, A Serious Man is also an incredible
Another
film
Minnesota
set.
movie,
Yeah, and that's very much obviously about their father and their Jewishness and all the rest of it, because their father, I believe, was a math professor at the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers! And it's a funny story about A Serious Man is that they filmed the famous cuck scene where he's at the cafe. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a cafe that I dine at frequently. So every time I go in, I say, I'm in the cuck cafe. I don't say it out loud, I'm not saying it to the
a menu
staff.
item or anything.
Yeah, no, there's no. Listen, no, this is a wholesome place. I'm not even kidding. It is Keys Cafe. It is an institution in the Twin Cities. When I lived in New York and I would come back to visit, the first thing I would do almost invariably was go to Keys and I would get the turkey dinner, and you can get still for under $20 at Keys Cafe, and they have multiple branches. You can get like a turkey dinner like you would get on Thanksgiving. And it's that kind of place with the gravy, and the lady will ask you, what kind of bread do you want? And they have Norman Rockwell, like goofy Garfield Norman Rockwell, drawings, and it's just a whole vibe. And I remember they shot that scene at that cafe. So that's the Cuck Cafe.
I'll drop a few more. You got Tommy Boy. It's a Midwest road movie. Hoosiers, arguably the best sports movie ever made. And then
Field of Dreams.
That's Iowa, right? That counts. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that counts big time. Yeah.
I didn't put it on my list. That's a big.
I'm looking at some list, and it includes Gummo, and I'm
Oh yeah, a lot of lists include Gummo. Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
Gummo does have a certain Midwest vibe, actually. I think. I mean, it's a screwed up movie, but parts of the Midwest are pretty screwed up. So, that definitely doesn't exempt it.
Yeah, for a while, libtards used to love to poke fun at the meth West or whatever.
Right.
Oh
right.
yeah. Huh. I think you're talking about maybe coastal elites.
Yeah.
There's one that I have to mention. I can't say it's a personal favorite, but Grumpy Old Men.
Oh yeah,
And that house is, or no, I think it might be the Odd Couple house that's over kind of in my neighborhood over where I live. Yeah. So there's another one that it's a Christmas movie that's set in St. Paul. I think it might be Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, that's St. Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, that's set. So if you want to get some footage of old St. Paul before it turned into an apocalyptic wasteland downtown, you could watch Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, Arnold and Sinbad. Last one I'll mention. This one was new to me. It had interested me for a long time, and I never got to it. But Take Shelter. Have you guys seen that?
Take Shelter. Is that the Michael Shannon Storm movie? Yeah, that's a really good movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had skipped it for so long. I liked it a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot too. It's a cool movie.
I love Michael Shannon. I mean, I just watch stuff if he's based on him being in it. He's one of a handful of actors that are like that for me. I don't even really care what the movie is.
I don't know if this counts or qualifies, but this is the biggest movie that ever happened in the region that I'm from, like directly from, and it was huge. They cast a bunch of people off the reservation and shot it. I am not sure exactly where they shot it, but to us, it was a huge milestone growing up. Dances with Wolves. That was so influential. And I know it does. I'm not sure how well it holds up. It's definitely got kind of a weird, I'm not sure it's a great film per se, but man, that was a big, big deal in my childhood for sure.
I also watched Prairie Home Companion movie. That was kind of a dud.
Yo, listen, Garrison Keillor is my nemesis. He's like my dark. He doesn't know that he's my nemesis, but he's like my dark antithesis in my mind. I'm trying to make radio in St. Paul that is not that. No buttermilk biscuits. The kids are not all average. The jokes I hope are better and more current. And your world is gone, buddy. Whatever your generation did, it didn't work out. Look around. Yeah. And here we are.
He got like Me Too'd for, I think, like hugging a girl.
For hugging a girl like in an uncomfortable way. And I really have a theory about that. And I will talk shit on Maine. I have a theory that they just wanted to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Everybody was just sick of the shtick. Everybody was like, we're just done. We're done. It's not funny. Nobody's laughing. Get the fuck out of here. You're not relevant anymore. Go back to New York where you principally live. The
institution fell off. It seems like that other guy came in, but it
was never. I mean, it was Garrison Keillor's show. I mean, let's be real. Yeah, that was not a prairie home that I would recognize. That was not a world that I came from. Yeah. And I always resented that kind of shucks down home herder, kind of even if it's ironic or with a little wink, it's like, I know you got money, and I know your money protects you and you can go to New York when you want and you can go to Florida in the summer or in the winter rather. And that's not the trailer park reality that I was aware of as a child.
Yeah. Well, I think we can agree that despite a rich canon of Midwest cinema, Fargo's the best.
Oh yeah, no, there's no question.
Yeah. I think, I think there's multiple reasons. I mean, it's the performances and the writing, but it also does the best job, I think, of like working with the material of the Midwest. And I don't know how much more I can put in that word, but like it feels watching it again, I got some stuff out of it this last time, and I'd probably seen it a half a dozen times at least. But I felt like you could. I don't love The Office, but you know that thing where they kind of look at the camera and you're like, oh yeah, this is like supposed to be a documentary.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like there's a handful of times where I almost felt that moment was going to happen. Margie was going to look at the camera and kind of like roll her eyes or something. It felt very much like this was an actual place with actual people. I got fascinated by the sort of the bit parts, like the guy that they interview in his driveway about, he'd heard something at the bar.
Yeah, in front of the grain elevator.
Yes.
I love that part.
I was like, that guy is perfect. I don't know where they got that guy, but he is perfect. And there was a handful of parts like that.
Jose Feliciano, absolute banger.
Was that
banger.
That was Jose Feliciano?
Yeah. Jose Feliciano as himself. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Isn't there an actual famous Jose Feliciano?
Yeah. I mean, he's in the whatever. He's when Buscemi's got the kind of the goofy whore, and he takes her out. He takes her out for a nice night.
Oh, that Jose. Oh, yes. Sorry, yes. Yeah, right. When he takes her to whatever that place is, that
dining club.
The Rainbow Room or whatever it is.
The Rainbow Room, and it's probably Native American casino or whatever. Yeah.
And listen, the fellow who, so one of the theses about the Coens that everybody talks about, and it's pretty obvious, is that their motif their major concern is kind of pure evil. Like pure evil, like the shark in Jaws, but as people. Mm-hmm. And in this film, it's represented by Buscemi's partner.
Yeah.
That fellow. And whoever what's the name of the dude who played him? We gotta find that, because he's just an absolute animal. There's nobody phones in a part in this film.
Yeah, it's a Swedish name.
Yeah, he's terrifying. I mean, he's terrifying. And the moment at the end where she's got him. Yeah, Peter Stormare. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Terrifying. I've got it playing here now in the background, and it's showing the moment where they kidnap her and she gets caught up in the shower curtain in their home that would now be $600,000.
Right.
Yeah.
That is as flimsy as as could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Stormare only has 15 lines in the movie.
Yeah.
He almost never talks. He's just there to be scary.
Right, but that way he just looks at people and stares off into space, and it's talking about getting different stuff out of it from this viewing, from previous viewings. I think in previous viewings, that moment where Buscemi's character is, he's talking and he's chattering and he's trying to get Peter Stormare's character to talk, and he's like, "Oh, you're just, you're just a fucking fountain of conversation," and Steve kind of devolves into two could play that game, silence, right? He just he cannot stop talking. It's hilarious.
Pancakes. We go pancakes. Right. Pancakes house.
Right.
Yeah, which I read that he the script is written with the S, Pancakes House.
Pancakes House. That's awesome.
And his English wasn't great, but he knew English well enough to know that was wrong.
Right.
So he tells the Coens, he's like, "There's a problem." They're like, "There's no problem. This is you're supposed to live like an idiot."
Say Pancakes House. Right.
Pancakes House.
Right.
I want more fucking pancakes. I want a steak.
Right.
Somewhere I can get laid.
How does the true story thing work for you guys? Maybe it's been too long since you first experienced it or whatever, but is that a gimmick? Do you guys feel it's a gimmick, or how does it work for you?
I mean, go ahead, Brad. I was going to say I quite like it. And I actually did spend a fair amount of time sort of thinking about this, watching it, because the film, the television series, those all have that as well. And in there, it starts to feel a little tacked on, but there's something about it in this film that I don't know exactly. it's hard to like go back and put myself in the mindset of not knowing that that's a lie, but it does have the effect, I think, of making it feel. It's like they're building a myth or a folk tale about this part of the country, and something about doing that, like, I think, can shove it into a different part of your brain, like you process it slightly differently, and it's kind of is like it's like a meta true story. Right? We just said it's the best movie about the Midwest. Well, okay, if it's none of it actually happened, and yet it's the best movie about the Midwest. There is something that's like, what's the fancy word for it? It's like truer than true, right? So it does. I think it's very effective like that. But I feel like nobody else can ever do it again. Like it was like a one-time trick that the Coens got to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's pointing to their literary ambition. Like this film is very. It's obviously it's very filmic, but they're very writerly. I mean, they won Best Screenplay for this. Not that the Oscars matter that much, but it's about the writing, and there's a sense of like. I mean, true like an arrow. Mm-hmm. True, like it's that other meaning of true. Mm-hmm. Like we are aiming to tell you something that is real. Mm-hmm. That is true in that other sense, and knowing full well that people will go and imagine. And I think there's also like a little funny meta thing where it's like we're going to start the film out with a lie,
right?
Which then that's the film is kind of all about a big lie. And it's very funny because he's a used car salesman. He's full of shit,
right?
Yeah, right. From jump. It's in his character. That would be he just takes that to the nth. I have nothing against used car salesmen. My paternal grandfather was a used car salesman, but we all know there's a sort of a
stereotype.
You got to be a little bullshit artist to succeed. Right. Yeah.
There was one other movie that got away with it. There might be more, but one other comes to mind just a few years after this, which was Blair Witch.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Literally recently someone told me they're like, that's based on a true story. I'm like, that was a trick. And they're like, no, it's true. Like my family knows people like connected to that. I'm like, no, they don't. Like, no, but they don't. They believe it. So
I remember seeing that movie and again, I think that was another movie that came out. Maybe the internet existed, but it wasn't 2024 internet, right?
Normies, it was not. Normies were not on the internet,
right? And so you'd go into a movie not really knowing that much about it, maybe having seen a commercial, maybe having a friend that told you about it. That would be kind of all you would know about a movie frequently. And I remember going into that, watching it coming out, and my friends and I, were teenagers, having like a kind of drawn out argument about whether that was actually found footage or not.
Yeah. A lot of people believe. I remember lots of people in my peer group thought it was just completely real.
Yeah.
VHS tape.
I remember I saw Blair Witch in Minneapolis, and it came out there a little bit earlier than. Because there's like indie theaters that, whatever had the early release of it. And then I went back home to Mandan and everybody was talking about it. And I had seen it. And I remember feeling it was kind of cool. It was like I had already seen it. And they're like, well, what's it like? What's it like?
You know? And I'm like,
well, you got to watch. Yeah, exactly. I knew the Blair Witch before the Blair Witch was cool, man. I knew the Blair Witch a week before you did. That's still a scary film, man. You watch that, you dim the lights and show that. I mean, can about imagine teenagers now having a sleepover, or even knowing that it's not real. You turn the fucking lights out and throw that on, man. Yeah, you're gonna
unsettling.
Yeah.
I think Brad, I think it was you getting into it. I'm sorry if I mixed you guys up, but I think you were talking about the sort of a recurring theme of the Coens being, the idea of ultimate evil. Yeah, I'm curious other major themes you guys see throughout here, like, and what broadly, if you could sum it up, like, what would you say it's about? What is Fargo really about?
Oh,
I'll throw that to you. I'll throw that to you, Brad.
Oh, what is Fargo about?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think some of the themes I sort of, watching it this time, weirdly enough, the William H. Macy characters seem to like kind of fade into the background a little bit for me, but at the same time, he feels like the he does feel like the central character, and he feels like he's sort of weirdly enough, he's sort of the everyman of the film.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
And there's and this is, relates to like No Country for Old Men too, right? There's this idea that like you can have a momentary decision that you might make a momentary decision based on the needs or the desires that all of us have, and any one of us could kind of make, and the consequences of that can become so labyrinthine that you like can't escape. And then in Fargo, it's not just about that car dealership, or he sort of starts ripping off the car dealership, right? And it leads to this and that, and he has to, finally he's hiring somebody to kidnap his wife, and it gets completely insane. And yet, to me, there's something similar. And sorry if this is too difficult to follow. I'm just articulating this myself for the first time. There's something to that. There's something similar to the relationship that the decision he makes to sort of commit his first crime and all the things that lead to it, and being in the Midwest and you having an ancestor who landed here, and now you have to deal with it. If that makes sense. Yeah. It's like none of those people, and none of the people in this film made the decision to live in that part of the world. They're all just kind of there.
That's a great observation, and something that I've lived with my entire life. Like, It's that old Bill Hicks joke. It's like, fucking Paris. Right. Why did I have to be born, here? Yeah. I would just say, really, in summary, I think it's about the quiet desperation of everyday people making bad choices that lead them to confront ultimate evil. That's fundamentally what it's about.
Yeah, I really, really hate how what's Jerry Lundegaard, William H. Macy's character. He's just this, he's really disgusting sort of guy. If you knew him, you would be disgusted. You wouldn't like him. And I really hate how much I relate to him. I'm like,
yep.
I'm like, I can, oh, yeah. Like, I have some of these tendencies too, to think I can get away with something, right, where I can get, just a little bit longer. No one needs to find out, and I can,
you get over on somebody. Yeah. And it's also it's a very American film. It's not just about the Midwest. I mean, we're in this PvP zone where we're all trying to get an edge on somebody. And the father-in-law, when that great scene where he's watching the Gophers, he's sitting there and he says that, what does he say? He basically says that Macy's wife and Scotty never have to worry. Right. But
Jerry out of that.
Yeah. Jerry's not taken care of. Jerry's not a man the way that his father-in-law is a man. Right. And it's about manhood too. It's about masculine. It's a very masculine film, despite the protagonist being this the pregnant detective.
Right.
Yeah. I think for me, I see it, to sum it up, I mean, I'd say it's about hubris. It's about dishonesty. It's about, forces that you can't control, which is a big, I see a lot of overlap with Fargo and No Country, but
Yeah.
getting involved with things that are way beyond your capacity and not seeing it until it's way too late. And then at the end of the film, and greed, greed is the big part of it. Marge or Margie, I don't, maybe it's one or the other, but
Margie, I think they
she says,
Margie.
Yeah.
Margie.
She says to the Swedish guy, I think his name's Geir. I don't know if that's like a real name, but I guess it's a Swedish name. But she says to him, she says, "There's more to life than a little money, And it's also very funny. Like a male police officer is not probably giving this motherly lecture to a guy who just like chopped up his friend or his accomplice. But she's doing this like motherly thing. Like, yeah, there's more to life than money. Don't you know? Can't believe you don't know that.
But so, there's also a way that I feel like that shot and the setting of that shot where I felt it was implied, like she says that, and then the way it's shot, I'm like, is there though? Like, is there more than money? Because it doesn't.
Well, right, and like there is. Well, I mean, and then what happens next is she has to congratulate her portly husband on his Mallard getting on the 3-cent stamp. Right. And how, and literally postage is money. I mean, so there's this like, I have to say, I got to bring up something. This is critical for my reading of Fargo and my relationship with it. The scene with Mike Yanagita in the Radisson, there was the longest time where I thought, and I think it was because I was young, but where I thought, Fargo's almost a perfect movie, but that scene with Mike Yanagita, I don't understand it. And I guess I'm not hosting, but I want to throw it at you guys. What is your understanding of that scene? Why is that scene in the film? Because then I'll share my thought.
I'm glad you asked. I have that question on here. Brad, I'll let you go first. I have kind of an answer worked out for myself, but I'll give Brad a shot.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly is entertaining the right word? It's memorable, and I had always kind of thought of it as, I don't want to say a throwaway, but it always did feel a little tacked on for all of its watchability. It always felt a little sort of, I'm not quite sure, but watching it this time, I again sort of realizing that there's stuff that stood out to me that hadn't stood out in previous watches, and a big one example of that is the relationship between Margie and her husband. I really felt like the sweetness of that relationship to a degree that I hadn't before, and maybe now it's because I'm like, middle-aged and married or whatever. but there's like this level of banality to it or whatever, but there's also like, he gets up and makes her breakfast, and I'm going to get to the mic.
I'm watching that scene right now.
Yeah.
Prowler needs a jump.
Right. Yeah. And he gets out and he does it. And he, when she wakes up for the phone call, he says, well, I'm going to make you some eggs. And she tells him not to. And he says, no, you got to eat breakfast. And there's a moment where they're not looking at each other, but there's a moment where she smiles, and you can tell that she feels, whatever else this environment is, she feels loved. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Yanagita, I'm sorry, I'm butchering his last name.
Yanagita.
Yeah. To me, he sort of is this like he's indicating the opposite of that. It's just like this bottomless loneliness. But I don't know, other than that, what it's trying to say.
Yeah. I love the Yanagita scene. I think it's so fun. That guy, I'm not familiar with him as an actor. I looked him up. He was a comedian in the 90s. Maybe I think he's still out doing stuff, but he's very funny. What is it? He says like it's a Radisson. It's good. It's good. Or something like that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my understanding of that scene is that she's a good cop, but she's a little naive, and she believes his story about his wife dying.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, she's talking to her friend back in Brainerd.
Brainerd.
Yeah. And the friend is like, Mike Yanagita's not married or something like that. He never had a wife or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
He's
so,
been struggling.
yeah. So it wakes her up to just how deceitful people are. And I think that reminds her basically to go question Jerry again.
Oh,
That's my understanding of the scene.
Right.
That's a plot connection that I had not made. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to rewatch it. Well, I've got it in the background right now. But yeah, no, I'm going to rewatch it with that in mind. But I'm going to echo what Brad said. I mean, I think he's poor Mike Yanagita he's the symbolic opposite of somebody who can't connect, and also. There's a great poem by John Updike called Fargo that talks about how. Well, am I going to read a poem? I'm going to read a poem right now.
It's called Fargo, so
it's called Fargo. I'm going to read a poem. The fertilest soil this side of the Tigris and Euphrates, so the school children of the countryside are taught, of their land flat as a checkerboard to the hem of the sky. The giant sky, pale green at dusk, stays black long after morning cow milking time. Wind is incessant in winter, so that snow falls sideways like Arctic sunshine. This land of Lutherans and sugar beets thickens its marvelous thinness here at the edge of a red river whose windings alone betray the rectilinear. Downtown, parking space is no problem, and grain-fed health rewards those God's grandeur does not drive mad. So the connection I'm making there is, Mike Yanagita is the man who's been driven mad by the very landscape, by the very environment. People go cabin crazy. You can live in Minneapolis and the winter can make you nuts. 6-7 months, you go crazy. So there's an element there too, I think, where they're showing them. There's one other thing that I'm desperate to talk about.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh God, it escaped me because I just read a poem. No, you keep going; it'll come back to me.
Well,
yeah.
The other thing. Oh, sorry. One more thing on this bit. Like it reminds me too, and why this film is so good at sort of capturing the more. I think we can have a tendency to romanticize. Living in rural environments or semi-rural environments, and certainly I'm moving more in that direction all of the time. Getting further and further from the cities, and I don't really even care to be in a city of more than 50,000 people anymore. But I think the other side of that is like, the story he tells, though it's not true. You can see how, like, you live in that situation and you're married and then your spouse just dies. You're sort of like, well, I guess that's it. Like, I guess, you know what I'm saying? Whereas if you live in a more urban environment, there are other people. There are many other people who may be in a comparable situation to you that you can relate to. But when you live in a small town, or you live out in the boonies, that might just be it. You might not get to meet another person. That might be, the rest of your life is just kind of dealing with that.
Listen, and dating in Minneapolis is rather famously. I remembered the thing that I wanted to say, and this is a fun anecdote that has just returned to me. So I had a fantastic English professor at the University of Minnesota, Go Gophers, who taught a huge seminar, and often, and it was one of these early English seminars, you got to take as a freshman, right? It's your freshman or English seminar. You got to take it. There's like 400 or 500 people in the room. 90% of people are just tuned out. And I really got into it. I mean, in this class, and I wish I could remember his name. I could go back into my transcripts and find it. But this class it actually changed my life because I got turned on to the play Fences. And I realized, wow, you can do that with a play. And it sort of inspired me to, it planted a seed in my head about maybe, playwriting, that would be interesting. But there's this funny story that he told about how there was a screening in France about of Fargo, and there was a Q&A, and the Coens were there, and there was like some Frenchman who was like, now I think I'm not going to do a French accent, but the Frenchman thought it was so funny that they named the city Brainerd, like brain nerd, and the Coens are like, no. That's a place. That's a name of a town.
Place.
We're not that clever.
Oh man.
Well, that's funny. They have responded on record about naming why is a movie called Fargo when only like 6 minutes takes place in Fargo. They're like, well, Brainerd's a bad name for a movie, so.
Right. Well, yeah, that's true.
You know who I feel bad about, and it's like I've been haunted by this for a long time. You know who the ultimate loser of this film is? Anybody have any thoughts?
That's a good question.
It's
the son, maybe.
Yeah, the son, Scotty.
Yeah.
Poor Scotty. What's left for Scotty? Dad's in prison.
Yeah.
Grandpa's
That's a good point. Mom's dead. His grandfather's dead.
Yeah,
did he have a grandma?
Scotty. I mean,
She's already dead.
I don't know. She doesn't show up.
The grandfather seems to move around by himself, so let's presumably grandma's dead.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean anything. Grandpa moving around
Yeah.
by himself. But yeah, no. But I have often like finished this film and been like, oh man, poor Scotty.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
damn.
Scotty's. You could say I could see someone criticizing, saying from the perspective of the film, saying, "Oh, Scotty's sort of treated like an afterthought," but it's his father who's treating him like an afterthought.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. Nobody's thinking about him. Well, his mother was, right? But she's forcibly taken out of the situation. So, yeah.
Yeah. Although, I mean, not to be too crass, but I guess Scotty's about to inherit his grandfather's estate or something.
That's true. Yeah, he's gonna do
Right?
it.
Yeah. Scotty's in the will. He'll be all right.
Yeah, he's moving to California.
Yeah, right. Yeah, somewhere sunny. Yeah.
And Stan Grossman as his consigliere.
Oh, what a great name for a character.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, and Stan Grossman, I mean, he's like implied. He's the local Jew, right? Like that's like a
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
he's the Jewish lawyer, banker, finance guy I took note of Grossman because it seems like old guys just used to have a guy like that. It'd be like, he's like, Stan, it's Grossman, run it through him.
Yeah.
Well, we do have Dan Baltic. Dan Baltic is our guy. You know,
Did Baltic see this yet? Run it by Baltic.
Yeah, right.
We got to run it by Baltic. Run it by the nut man.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times.
I noticed that Stan Grossman, and this is probably because I have a very slight case of face blindness. But Stan Grossman and what's Margie's husband's name? Norm,
yeah.
Those guys look like the same guy to me.
Well, Norm, I will never get confused because he's one of the great character actors of our age, and he is Arthur Lee Allen in Zodiac. So
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
he has a bit of range. That actor.
Yeah, he does.
In Zodiac, he's absolutely terrifying, and in this,
John Carroll Lynch.
Yeah, and this he's just a sweet stay-at-home house husband, I guess.
Right.
Who knows what's going on down by the lake? I'm watching the scene with the hookers, the whores.
Ever living your childhood.
We're from White Bear Lake there. Go Bears. My butcher is in White Bear Lake. Shout out to Jeremy. I always got to shout out Jeremy at White Bear Butcher, Flicker Meats, the greatest butcher shop in the Twin Cities. I'm not even kidding. If you're in town, go up there and get a sandwich. Tell Jeremy Kevin sent you. I'm not even kidding. Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, and White Bear Lake is where F. Scott Fitzgerald, who we just covered on the pod, he used to drive around and drive drunk and clip mailboxes and wreck his car. And White Bear Lake used to be where the swell set from downtown would the vacation. Used to be like a little local vacation spot in the summer. You'd go up to White Bear Lake. Now it's just a suburb. But
Where do they go now? Where does the swell set go now?
in the summer?
Yeah.
Oh hell, I don't even. What makes you think I would know?
I don't know. I thought maybe you heard through the grapevine. I don't know. Yeah.
Europe? I don't know. What's left, Brad? What is left?
Americans just go to Europe now. Americans, I'm overstating it, but they've not given up on their own country, but they go abroad way more than they used to.
Yeah.
Well, the honest truth is that Minnesotans, you go to your cabin. That's what you do. If you're a real Minnesotan, you go to the cabin. That's what you do.
Oh, that's definitely a Michigan thing.
I'm from Utah. That's the big status thing there too. If you have a cabin. Yeah.
Well, and the funny, and I'm watching. The funny thing is that's where they hide out. They hide out up at the cabin. They're at a cabin by the lake, and they're going crazy. Because they're not up there to ice fish.
Yeah. What do you guys think about? So it's kind of a bold move to have your protagonist be pregnant, and then 9 times out of 10, or maybe even more, if you show a pregnant woman by the third act, she's going to have the baby.
Right.
It's going to be a big part of the thing. And I don't want to I'm using a joke for like the third time, but Chekhov's pregnancy or something.
Right.
Like if you show a pregnant woman, she's going to have the baby.
Right.
But she doesn't. And the movie ends, I think the final line of the movie is 2 more months. We're this baby's coming in 2 more months. Winter will be over.
Yeah.
What is there some symbolism there? What do you guys make of all that?
Oh, Brad.
Well, I thought that was interesting too. The Chekhov's pregnancy is hilarious, and you would expect it because it's like there is a sort of a screenwriting 101 thing that's like, well, if she's not going to have the baby, why is she pregnant? And it doesn't really fit in. It doesn't really drive the plot, even at that level that you were talking about with our buddy Mike at the Radisson. Like, as far as I can remember, there's nothing that happens because she's pregnant. I don't think.
No, she's just mildly inconvenienced from.
I have thought about this a lot. I think it makes her actions doubly heroic.
That's true.
It makes her wildly sympathetic, and it also makes you worry more about her safety. Like, is she at risk? And when there are moments where she might be, not that she's ever like put up against a wall or manhandled, but it creates an additional tension, I think.
Well, because you definitely know that if the situation plays out a certain way, they're gonna kill her.
Right, she's going to meet the Buscemi character and his accomplice, and I think it creates an additional tension. Yeah.
It's clever. I mean, you never see that. That's very. You're totally right. Like, normally, if a woman is pregnant in a movie, it's basically a movie about her. That's what the movie is about.
Yeah,
to some degree.
And you would expect, it would be in the third act, there'd be some moment where she's about to do something important, but then can't because contractions or something.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I just see the pregnancy. Other than that, and combined with the final lines of the movie, it's just sort of some symbol of hope or renewal. There's been all this death, there's been all this chaos, but life goes on, and babies are born in the spring and all that.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's talk about the. I wanted to get into just the performances real quick. We've touched on it from as we've gone, but who does anyone not deliver an excellent performance here?
I mean,
Jose Feliciano. No, I'm kidding. He crushed it.
No, everybody's pretty great. Yeah. I mean, even this is a movie that makes you appreciate character actors, though, for sure. Right? Because nobody in here is particularly good looking. Most of these people were nowhere. I mean, I guess who's like the biggest star from this movie? I guess it's Buscemi, right?
Yeah, was he a thing yet? In
I don't
96?
think so. I think this is kind of what launched him into
He'd
like
done Reservoir Dogs
Mm,
3 years earlier or something.
right. So I think this was like definitely on the upswing of his career. Uh, and so even at that point, I mean, nobody really knew who he was. William H. Macy, nobody knew. And yet, yeah, everybody just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, Macy was begging for the role. He was a relative unknown, I think.
Mm. He's perfect. I mean, he's perfect for it.
I mean, he absolutely. I mean, he's great.
The grandpa had had a big career like in westerns, like in the 60s and 70s or something.
Sense.
But
that makes sense.
But yeah, he was. I think he had kind of he was not a going concern at the time of this movie.
Right.
I'm watching the moment where she's at the. Is she at the buffet? See, and that's very, very funny.
Yeah,
because she's going along the buffet and she is just grabbing a lot of food. There's a lot of food on those plates for a lady, but she's eating for two.
Yeah.
John Kasich obviously didn't make it to the buffet scene. That guy likes to eat. I don't know if you know the meme about him. He was when he ran for president, he was just constantly like big mouthing all these sandwiches.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he would have liked that buffet scene.
It should have front loaded that for him.
I mean that buffet scene, it's just so Midwestern too. It's just you love it. You love it. Oh man, I don't tend to eat at buffets. I'll tell you what. But in my childhood, there were a lot of sneeze guards in my childhood.
Well, my kids, they've only been to buffets a couple of times. They think it's the most incredible thing ever.
Yeah, they can. It's a great deal, right?
Yeah. That restaurant, I think I read that they did no set dressing. That's like that as that restaurant.
Oh, it's perfect, dude. And by the way, just take me back. Just shove me right into the machine. I don't care. 1987 Minneapolis, take me back, baby. I'm ready.
Yeah. I think everyone has a great performance. Buscemi and Macy are probably the standouts for me. Macy, just being this guy, what would you say? Just always on the edge of a breakdown, and I think I think everyone does great.
And go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
No. Macy has to act somebody acting. That's not easy to do. That is very, very difficult to do.
He does. Yeah, he does a great, and that you can tell that's what he's doing too. It's so like this is you put it perfectly. That's the awkwardness, that's the tension, that's like the I don't know about you guys, but like whenever there's no moment that I really like him, as like a person, and yet I'm constantly feeling the whole film. I'm feeling that anxiety of like that getting caught feeling. Like, I don't know when you were young, if you got in trouble, but like you'd done something and you hadn't quite gotten in trouble yet, like that. I feel like that the whole movie, like, are they going to find out that this happened? Like, for 90 minutes straight, I'm pretty much feeling that, and it's largely because of his performance and his like gradually kind of, like you said, breaking down, and
he's
not emasculated too. Like I hate seeing a dude get emasculated on film.
He's not made to be sympathetic, but then he does have that little scene with his son where he's kind of he's like, mom's gonna be okay. Mm-hmm. It's cringe, but it's also like, oh man, does he really care? And also just like how pathetic he is. Mm-hmm. There's a part of me that it's like you identify with like a kicked dog, like his little golf garbage, his little golf kitsch just makes me, I don't know, his
little doodles on his golf notepad.
Yeah.
Right. Apparently he was doing those on set, and the Coens are like, this is a nice little pathetic thing that this guy probably does. So included it.
He's just dreaming about the spring, right? Yeah. So he can get the clubs out. Right?
Yeah. Here's a quote from the Coens. They say, "I don't think either of us realized what a tough acting challenge we were handing Bill Macy with this part. Jerry's a fascinating mix of completely ingenious and the utterly deceitful. yet he's also guileless. Even though he set these horrible events in motion, he's surprised when they go wrong.
Right.
So yeah, he's doing a lot of things at once.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Overconfident, terrified,
Right.
And Buscemi is perfect. Just perfect. Just kind of funny looking.
Yeah. Yeah. In what way?
Just
generally.
Yeah. Just generally. Yeah. Yeah. I decided not to park here.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's so good. Even
I mean, that is crap. I mean, if you leave, they should not charge you.
No,
they shouldn't charge you.
Yeah.
But they got to charge you. See,
Right.
there are rules. There are firm, strict boundaries here in the Twin Cities and environs that have to be followed.
The rule of law must be upheld.
Yeah. But see, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still trying to understand Minnesota Nice. Minnesota Nice would be forcing you to pay for it, but being really courteous about it.
Correct. Just exactly like that guy does. I mean, it's a great performance.
Well, you got to pay.
You got to pay. I mean, it's the rule. The guy couldn't imagine just pressing the button. We talk about this a lot, and there's a thing called the law of Jante, which is a code of conduct that was identified by Danish-Norwegian author Axel Sandemos, and it has to do with sort of like Scandinavian rules and attitudes. Mm. And if you want to understand Minnesota, you got to understand this. I'm just going to read these real quick, okay? Mm. The 10 rules are: you're not to think you are anything special. Mm. You're not to think you are as good as we are. You're not to think you are smarter than we are. You're not to imagine yourself better than we are. You're not to think you know more than we do. You're not to think you are more important than we are. You're not to think you are good at anything. You're not to laugh at us. You're not to think anyone cares about you. You're not to think you can teach us anything. Whoa. And it's about the you, the individual, against we, the collective. And there's that Scandinavian soft socialism, if there's such a thing, and it completely defines the Twin Cities, and particularly Minneapolis.
I had a Danish friend who I don't know if it was the same exact like school of philosophy that you were just referring to, but he told me something that they tell the kids in elementary school or primary school, whatever they call it there, very similar to that. Like you're not as special as you think. Whereas in America, of course, the messaging is like, you can be, the next Obama, whatever.
Right.
Sure. Right. Yeah. You could be the next podcaster. You could be the next, but it's, and yet Minnesota is in America. So you have this weird tension. It's a very unusual place. And I think people, have come to understand that it is, but people love it here. And it's not, what do we say? I mean, it's a good place to raise a family. It used to be better, but it still is. I mean, if you want to, and if you want to look on Trulia, look on the property, values. I mean, it's still an affordable place. It's not LA. It has a lot to recommend it. I would hate to sort of like turn people off, so.
Well, you want those home values to stay good, low.
Absolutely. No, I need the home values to go up. I need people to flood in. I need this corner of the internet to flood in. Everybody, come on down to Jerry Lundegaard. We got a good deal going on this weekend. We'll get you that True Coat. We'll throw the True Coat in for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the music. I'm not sure the main theme I just think is excellent. I don't know if there's anything else to say about it besides that. It's adapted from like a Swedish folk song. I love the theme though. I play it all the time. I don't know if you guys thought any other thoughts on the music.
Not particularly, though. I do really like the theme. I hadn't realized. I just assumed it was an original score piece.
I thought so for a long time, but I looked it up. Yeah, it's based on some Swedish folk tune.
See, but that's so telling about the Coens and what they were planning to do, because they had a huge impact on the folk revival with, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That soundtrack made more money, I assume, than the film itself. That was huge. Everybody had that CD. So that's very interesting that they're like, we want a Swedish, let's adapt a Swedish folktale.
Yeah, and I don't know. They often work with Carter Burwell in music. Don't know whose idea it was, but I mean,
right.
Cohen set the tone right for the whole thing, and that's what I've always appreciated about them is that they clearly I don't know, maybe you guys know the quote. I can't remember. It might have been Norm Macdonald or someone else said something like, you can't do an impression of someone that you hate. Like, I think he was criticizing Alec Baldwin's version of Trump. He's like, it doesn't work because you can see that he just hates Trump. There's he doesn't get Trump. He only has hatred for him. And the Coens obviously love American folk history. They love Minnesota. They love they even love like the Western canon and stuff like that. Like they're very good with the Bible, despite I think only they were Jewish, so they at some point seem to have digested the New Testament as well. Like they're just very good. They just have a love for all this.
Well, how do you aspire to be a writer without onboarding that story? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I'll stand by that.
And then Roger Deakins shot the movie.
Yeah.
Now
the best.
He's basically considered the greatest living cinematographer. This was before he was so renowned, but it looks great. Lots of big wide open shots, which listeners of this show know that I like a lot.
Yeah. And it works for this. You need it for this because this is it's about the landscape. It's in part, right? The things that are happening to these people and the way they feel about it and the landscape are all entangled with each other. So you need somebody who can do that. Yeah.
Well, that's also what it's like out here. You live those long drives, the big wide sky, the big open prairie.
Yeah,
and then
that moment when Steve Buscemi's character buries the money, and then you look both ways, and it's unless you mark it, it's completely anonymous. Like there's no way you're ever going to find that spot again. Yeah, I thought that was both funny and and poignant in a way.
Yeah, and this is just trivia, but I believe that the briefcase is the same one, like the same physical briefcase used in No Country.
No way.
I think so. That's what I heard. And I think it appears in some other Coen Brothers movies as well.
That's awesome.
They have this traveling briefcase.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this is like a proto No Country. Like when she gets to that crime scene, it's like the exact same scene as the one in No Country when they're
it is. I mean,
analyzing the
and the way they break it down and like figure out what can be figured out from it. Yeah, it's very similar. Yeah,
and Stormare is not Anton Chigurh, but not too different either. I mean, he has somewhat similarities, and maybe the just a kind of a cold-blooded thing. I mean, that's maybe not too much of an overlap, but there's a bunch of little.
There's a psychopathic or whatever. Where I don't know what Chigurh is exactly, but there's a certain psychopathic quality. Chigurh is more competent. Or capable, I guess would be the word, but yeah.
And of course they're both about greed and the corrupting influence of money and getting in over your head and hubris and all that. Yeah. I asked you guys a question. I don't know if you had an opportunity to think about it, but we're remaking Fargo in 2024.
Yeah.
Who are we casting?
Yeah, this is a great. It's a great question. It's tricky for me thinking about some of the sort of leads. I don't know if you guys watched the Fargo television series, and I know we're not really dipping into that. We're focused on the film, but the first season of that it's a it's sort of a difference. It's quite similar to the film in terms of the premise. And the character that basically stands in for Jerry Lundegaard, I think his last name's Nygaard, played by Martin Freeman. And you see that and you're like, oh yeah, that's the other guy who could have played this. It's like, it's a really, really well cast. So it's hard for me to like think past those two guys to a third one. I think Stormare's character, I can't think of another Scandinavian guy, but I think like Benicio del Toro could have pulled that guy off. Just sort of hulking and like, hulking and surly and doesn't taciturn. Like I think he could have pulled that off.
I think we do Timothy Chalamet as the Buscemi character.
Why not?
We go for the
Congress did pass a law that he has to be in every movie.
We go for the twink angle.
Right.
He's a twink. Yeah. Listen, but Dune 2 is currently my favorite film, so I'm not speaking ill of Timmy. I'm actually a huge fan of Muad'Dib,
right?
Lisa Al Gaib.
And I'm glad you're a Dune 2 head. I did an episode about it, and I took on all the haters. There are many haters, and
good, yeah.
At least online there are. Off normies are just like, yeah, that was good.
Right.
Yeah, dude, it was.
I'm
obsessed. I say, go on, Brad.
It seemed to spur a lot of criticism that I didn't think made a whole lot of sense personally, but
it's a perfect film. It's another perfect. I mean, it's just perfect. Yeah. It's one is all set up, and then two is all delivery. So you just get like 3 hours of a dream of a reluctant Messiah. It's awesome.
Right.
Huge fan.
Right.
And you guys have a what's his name? Frank Herbert. You have a Frank Herbert episode, right?
Yeah, we did the full, profile on Frank Herbert. Yeah. It's an interesting story. He's a fascinating guy in a lot of ways and sort of full of contradictions. So it's a cool story.
All right, here's my castings. Unless you guys have any others.
No, go for it, man.
Or you can throw some more out as well. But Buscemi. No, so I kind of went with a millennial theme here.
Okay.
Buscemi, I've got Michael Cera.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
And then for Margie, I really couldn't think of anyone because there's like no starlets now that like who feature like wholesomeness or sweetness as like part of their thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
No, Zendaya does.
No, I mean, it can't be her. It can't be her. I didn't. Sydney Sweeney's too young. She is, at least there is a sweetness to her, but she's too young.
Mm-hmm.
Frances McDormand was like 46 or like 36 or no, what was she? She was late 30s in this movie, 38, 39.
Yeah.
So I this is maybe a crazy one, but I went to my youth. I went to my teen years, and I'm going to draft Hilary Duff.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I can see her in a trapper hat.
I can dig it. Yeah.
For Jerry Lundegaard, I think you guys will like this one.
Yeah.
Will Forte.
Oh yeah, that would work. Yeah.
I would like to. I just want to see him more in general. I think he'd do well.
Yeah.
Other one would maybe be Bill Hader.
Oh, so that could be interesting. If Bill Hader, I don't know if Bill Hader. Everything I've seen him with Bill Hader has been like straightforward comedy. Like, I'm sure he has the talent. He's a super talented guy to like make it funny the way that Fargo is funny.
Yeah. Have you seen Barry?
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Barry's pretty good. I only saw like the first season, but it was good. And then for the Swedish guy, now this person is not Swedish, but I think it would be really funny to you guys. I don't know if you guys are sports fans at all, but
Kevin more than I am. Yeah.
Jokic, however they say
it. Right.
I think he'd be really cool as a thug.
Yeah. I think that would work. I think he could pull that off. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
funny.
those are the only ones I had. But I think that's
Pretty
Interesting.
I struggle with this sort of stuff because I realized I don't know what you guys think of this, and maybe it's I have a hard time feeling like there are stars born after like I don't know 1990. Like there's a handful of them, but
yeah. There's like 6, and they're all in Dune too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Javier Bardem in that film. I know we're not talking about Dune 2, but it's just crazy. He's such a good actor. I mean, yeah.
Well, he
Yeah.
could probably play this Peter Stormare character.
He could play the
Yeah.
He could, but I mean, it's like he already did.
He's already Shigur.
so,
A little too on the nose.
Yeah, too on the nose.
You guys mentioned the show. I think I watched the first 2 seasons, maybe
Okay,
3. What did you guys think of the show? And then did you know that there was actually another show that was developed
I did not know about
in
this.
1997, a year after the movie?
Really? I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm a fan of. I'm generally a fan of the show. Certain seasons are better than others.
Yeah.
But
have you watched like 4 and 5? I haven't watched those at all.
Yeah.
5, the most recent one, pretty fun. It's about a ultra libertarian sheriff in North Dakota who won't take any shit from anybody. It's played by
John Hamm.
What's his name? John Hamm.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
really fun. That's fun. I mean, that's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
good.
I got into that.
Season 4, is probably fine for what it is, but it felt very. It just didn't hit the tone. Like, because the whole thing to me about Fargo and the point of making the show is about this very peculiar and particular tone.
Yeah.
Just like the way it feels. And the 4th
That's the
season,
one with
that's the one with Chris Rock. It just doesn't do that. It's fine. I guess it's fine for what it is, but it's not really why I was coming to watch the show. And then season 3, I get season 2 and season 3 mixed up. Whichever one has David Thewlis in it is one of my favorite characters
That's 3,
of all
I
time.
think.
David Thewlis is genius.
Yeah.
He's very
scary,
one of my
yeah.
favorite actors. And if you have never seen the film Naked, which is the film that put David Thewlis on the map, you have to stop everything after you're done listening to this podcast and find Naked and go and watch that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it, so I will do my homework.
It's hard to search for on the internet, but
Yeah, it's your Marquis de Sade research has ruined your
Yeah.
search
Oh my
history.
Googling naked
But no,
David Thewlis.
I'm imploring you to watch Naked David Thewlis, and of course, like David Thewlis showed up in Big Lebowski as Knox Harrington, the video artist.
right.
Yeah,
he's
no
there.
Pauly with the TV show. He tries to bring in as much Coen universe stuff as he can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I that's one of the cool things about watching it is it's just like picking up on these little details. You're like, oh yeah, that's and the most recent season has that too. I mean, the most recent season has the whole kidnap thing, and the who's kidnapped is a different kind of character than who is kidnapped in the Fargo film, but like there's a very similar setup to it, just in terms of staging. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see these things kind of, get another breath. It's neat to watch.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, there's the 1996 movie. There's the series that started in 2014 that's quite popular.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Secret Third thing, which
Yeah.
was a series. They only made the pilot, and it was done by Gwyneth Paltrow's dad, actually, Bruce Paltrow, who's like a Hollywood producer, I guess. They made a pilot starring Edie Falco as Margie,
I could work, yeah.
and then a bunch of other people. There was like one or two. Actually, the partner, the other officer from the movie, is in this show.
Okay.
He's like the only guy from the movie, I think. And
I could see Edie Falco actually pulling it in the 90s. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she's not terrible. It doesn't feel quite right, but it's also, it's also a pilot, and think pilots, sometimes have to be done a little cheap, but It's not great. It's not terrible, but it was. You can watch it on YouTube in 480p, but it's like it's a little bit like there's a bit of Twin Peaks there because it's like small town. Everything is great, except there's there's this evil. It's not it's not as it doesn't have the spookiness, but it does kind of go like. They play around with like being very matter of fact about like grisly murders or something like that.
Right.
It's okay, but it wasn't great.
1997. It was too early maybe to be able to make a show like that. I mean, if you just think of like the timeline of television development, right? Like, was The Sopranos even on yet in 1997?
No, Sopranos I think it was like 2 years later. Or something.
Right. So I don't think TV had space for something like that quite yet. But
the pilot was directed by Kathy Bates of all people. I don't know why, but
all right, that's strange.
And then there's the last question I have for you guys. This is a recurring question on this show, but would a Zoomer like Fargo?
I don't know, Kevin. What do you think?
The kind of Zoomer that I would hang out with would. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they. It's weird to think that for them it's like a super duper period piece.
Yeah.
I mean, it already was when it came out, but it's different now because it's how many years? Oh my God, I don't even want to think. It's 35 years, and I mean, I think when it's set, crazy.
I think they could. I mean, the thing is, it does have enough moments that are funny and not even like cerebrally funny, but just like legitimately funny. That I think, as long as they're not John Kasich, I think most people will get something out of it, right? So yeah, I think they kind of would. I would be interested to. It would be interesting to see somebody who's sort of grown up on, a Gen Z person who has sort of grown up on movies that are slick, where everyone is attractive unless they're like deliberately unattractive, and where everything has that like 2010s and on like lighting and camera. And just see how it lands for them.
Netflix house style, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even that's bad. It's just different. It's I can't remember. Everything kind of looks professional now. And this film looks like a '90s movie. And I love it, but it would be. I'm not sure how that lands.
I mean, and then is it woke? Because I mean, she's a police officer.
Yeah,
but she's a woman,
right?
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I have a Zoomer friend who is my translator for the Zoomers, and I'm not gonna bother her right now.
She should check in.
I'll check in
about that though.
I'll check in with her though, because she grew up on Tumblr, so she somehow managed to not be psyoped by Tumblr, but she saw things on Tumblr that what's the speech in at the end of Blade Runner? I saw things off the shoulder of Tumblr you people wouldn't believe. Yeah. I mean, for real. Yeah. We all psyop ourselves online in different ways.
That's true. Yeah.
I think the cool Zoomers would. Zoomers would get it
for sure.
I have a few Zoomer listeners, but they can leave comments or something. But
Yeah.
I don't have any other like main questions. Anything else that you guys, any takes you had on Fargo that you wanted to put out there?
We did not give credit to Shep Proudfoot.
Oh yeah,
and his very important, very strong performance. I don't know who that fellow is, but he's there. He does his job. He rousts Buscemi. He pulls the whore off Buscemi, beats the shit out of him, throws the whore out. He kicks the whore in the ass. I mean,
those ladies did a good job too. I thought.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
all of them. All there are 3 whores in this film.
That's right.
So
Three
one of
of them.
them, one of them was also like the accent coach for the movie.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah. And then one of them has had a surprisingly robust career when I clicked on the IMDb.
Interesting.
Yeah, Steve Revis as Shep Proudfoot.
Okay. Yeah.
Very,
Shouts out to
very
Steve.
handsome man. Yeah.
He hasn't worked since 2015 and pretty doesn't look too great.
No, that's too bad.
No, that's too bad.
He's done stuff, but
Well, listen, do not hire men to
died in
kidnap.
2017.
Oh, rest in peace. Do not hire men to kidnap your wife.
It seems like a pretty good rule.
Good move. Yeah, strong move. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you do, don't go budget on that.
Right.
Tan Cutlass Sierra.
I like how they call it tan. One detail I liked, and it deals with like the car dealership thing, is Lundegaard calls it burnt umber, but everybody else calls it tan.
Yes, it's burnt umber.
Right.
Yeah, very good.
The wood chipper is iconic, but I don't really see the point of the wood chipper. Like that leaves a lot of evidence.
Right.
I think it's just iconic, and it's like the savagery of it. And you could see how you could,
they weren't doing DNA in '87, but
yeah.
I guess if you got another snow on top of it, or the snow melted, maybe it would be a little less obvious. Yeah.
I have to point out that he's arrested outside of Bismarck, which is where your friend Kevin was born.
Oh.
So there you go. So and to get there, he would have to have driven up through Fargo and then out west. 3 tough hours west. Where there ain't nothing. Whoa. I mean, there's some towns, but it's just flat, empty. And you're literally like, if you're on E, you could be in trouble. It starts to get real desolate out that way.
Well, when it's a cool moment in the film when he runs out onto the ice, because it's like, dude, there's nowhere to go. Like, where are you going?
Yeah.
And, you can read a lot into that, I think, but there is something that's striking. Just watch this guy running across the ice and know that he's not. Yeah, there's no escape. Not really.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Thanks again for coming on. Everyone,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, everyone who's listening, go check out Art of Darkness. I'll put all the links, in the normal places.
Cool.
Check out their stuff. You're gonna like it.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Artofdarkpod.com. I'm gonna go have some pancakes.
Nice. Yeah, the Pancakes house. All right. See you guys.
Yep. Take care. Bye.